what I think is so important about your work is that you've identified at least one and clearly several ways that we can reset our levels, maybe even improve our abilities at directed attention. And again, I don't want to demonize social media, but social media is, it's a commercial product that we're engaging in. And we get returns in likes, follows, and some people get paid on there. But for the most part, it's a business. And we're the customer. And they're the owner.
And I'm just saying it's using directed attention. Like, it's not a restful activity, is basically. So you can choose to spend your directed attention allocation on that, but then you're going to have less, for your work or for other things.
So is it fair to say that low cognitive demand activities are not always restorative?
That's right.
I think people need to really understand that and hear that. I think, because when I think about, like, okay, like yesterday I recorded a solo on the podcast, and those are extremely, I don't use a teleprompter except for ads, because those have proper wording for legal reasons. The amount of attentional demand is immense. So I didn't do this, but in the past I would finish up, go home, and I would, I find that scrolling social media, it feels relaxed. You can do it reclined. If I just want, it's passive participation, unless I'm posting or commenting. It's just like, maybe use my thumb, like, and like some things. But even though it's low cognitive demand, it's draining, is what you're saying.
Exactly. And I mean, that's, Steve and I wrote this paper back in 2010, then it was still, television was still the kind of low cognitive load activity that we thought was not restful. And there's all these studies on television that people watching television, after they watch for a couple hours, they report being fatigued and being irritable.
Does cognitive performance decline after watching?
Cognitive performance declines. So it's just, even though it's low cognitive load, it's depleting. It's depleting of directed attention.
Well, I'm really extreme about this stuff, and I'm excited to be able to incorporate more knowledge toward creating better opportunities for directed attention to the right things and not depleting that. I mean, I'm so maniacal that, like, before I'll do a solo, I'll tell my assistant when he comes to the house in the morning, like, please don't talk to me today. I'm sorry, I don't want to be rude, but I need to keep rehearsing it in my head. I need to keep, not the specific words, but the concepts in mind. I'm literally thinking about, like, the structure of the vagus nerve, and I constantly, for usually about 48 hours before, in the same way that, like, you would obsess over something. And then once it's done, it's done. But anything that's introduced there, like having to make a decision about what to eat for breakfast, is interference. The brain is amazing, but we're not that great at using our brain to its best advantage always.
Or our bodies.
Well put. I want to make sure that we get back into this discussion about rumination. So you discovered that depressed people ruminate about their problem in nature in a way that allows them to dump the problem.
We don't know if people with depression ruminate about the problems. In the experiment, we kind of forced them to ruminate, to see if people are in this ruminative state, would nature still have a benefit? And it turns out that it did. Now, one thing that we were kind of wondering about is, like, do people maybe they just think less about their problems in nature than the urban environment? And we found that wasn't true. We were also this is actually work that we did with Ethan Cross, and actually my wife, Catherine Kirpin, was also an author on this study. We also thought maybe that maybe interacting with nature might put you in this more third-party distance kind of state. So instead of saying, Mark is so unhappy, or instead of saying I'm so unhappy, you'd say Mark is unhappy, this distant state. We didn't find evidence of that too. It wasn't that people thought about their problems from a more distant perspective in nature either. So what I think is happening is, I think we just increase their directed attention. And when you increase directed attention, you're able to do lots of things. And maybe they could just deal with the ruminations better because they had more cognitive resources to deal with those problems.
You mentioned impulsivity, aggression, and the probability of committing a crime. You have some data that there are these ways of reducing impulsivity more broadly.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think impulsivity is something that most people think they deal with. But I'll tell you, if you've ever found yourself picking up your phone just because everyone else did,
Right.
that's impulsivity.
Right.
And by the way, I think perhaps I've been a little bit unfair to social media, and I've spared the equally or maybe even more pernicious thing of modern life, which is texting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing to me on a plane how hard it is for people to disengage from texting.
Right.
And it's also amazing to me how we can all get into like 3 or 4 conversations over text, or 3 or 4 conversations with one person within a text thread.
Right.
I mean, if that were converted into like actual dialogue, it'd be
Yeah.
crazy. It would
Right.
be, it'd be like switching back and forth between 4 different conversations.
Right.
I mean, that party is nuts.
Right.
But in the form of texting, it's like we're doing it. Are there any data on what texting is doing to directed attention?
I haven't seen any on it, but I would say it's got to be depleting. There was some interesting work, actually, I think by one of your colleagues at Stanford, Anthony Wagner,
Oh, yeah.
who did work on these multimedia multitaskers. So people that text and are doing email or social media and something on the computer, like you're using multiple media devices simultaneously. Does that train attention or does it deplete attention? And I think those studies is quite evident that it depletes attention. It's not training people's attention; it's just depleting their attention. So I would say, yeah, I managing all those conversations is going to be very taxing of directed attention. Again, and I'm not somebody who's totally against smartphones. I have a smartphone. I don't do social media, but I do text a lot. I guess I try not to always be so fast. I say sometimes I'm just going to have my time, and not always be so fast to respond. But it's hard. It's very difficult. You have to be really mindful and protective of your directed attention.
And people get angry if they have kind of an expectation of response latency, and then you depart from that,
Right.
which is just nerd speak for sometimes I'll text back
Right.
fast, sometimes it will take me several weeks or
Right.
months. I think that's starting to normalize a little bit out
Yeah.
there because of the sheer volume of communication
Right.
that people are getting.
Right.
A few years ago, that was considered rude.
Right.
I've heard more and more discussions that I have no real knowledge of what the discussions were. But there's a very popular podcast, in particular for women, where the host was talking about this the other day. Someone sent it to me. They're like, "Oh, it's the texting 3 weeks later thing is becoming a norm." I think some people are just bombarded with
Right. Yeah.
with text messages. I guess our species is really good at creating technologies and then figuring out like, darn, like we need to backtrack a little bit,
Right.
and because all the programs, so like the program Freedom, for instance, which shuts down the internet for a certain interval of time on your computer. That was
Yeah.
great. Hardly anyone uses it.
Yeah.
And hardly any of the people I know who used to use it anymore. Forgive me, Freedom designers. But it's like it starts to just disappear because
Yeah.
the culture drifts in a
Right.
new way.
Right.
And people like Cal Newport or you who don't have social media, or me who put social media on a separate phone and takes a month to reply to a text
Right.
unless it's urgent.
Right.
We're considered the weirdos.
Yeah. So it's hard, but again, I've seen people that like on email where they'll have an auto reply that just says, "I'm not going to respond really quickly," or "I only respond to email, at this time and this time," and I think that makes sense, again, because we have to protect our directed attention. We're just not going to be good functioning humans if we're just constantly being depleted.